Okay, so we're going to continue on with Illustrator. Still working with basic objects, but we're going to look at manipulating them, moving them, rotating them, scaling them, constraining their movement, things like that. Okay, so as usual, I'm in Essentials Classic, right, with my palettes open. And I'm going to get this basic shapes sub toolbar out again just by holding down the rectangle tool, going to the little tear off tab there, just so I can access these easily. And I guess I'll just draw an ellipse for starters and give it some color. Okay, and as usual, exit the ellipse tool. You always go back to the selection tool. Otherwise, you're just gonna, every time you try to select to do something, you're gonna keep drawing ellipses, which we don't want. So first of all, to move an object, we already saw this last time, I think, is just to, you click on it and drag it, right? If it has no fill, that's not gonna work because there's nothing in the middle there. So if you're going from the if there's no fill, you have to drag on the edge of it, okay? But we have a fill turned on. So to make a copy, it's very easy. You just hold down Alt, okay? And you'll see that your cursor doubles up when you're over something that can be copied. Okay, so I just Alt and drag, Alt, click and drag. All right, so that's simple enough. You can go, like any other program, you can go edit, copy, and edit, paste. And also, like pretty much any other program, the shortcuts are Control-C to copy to the clipboard and Control-V to paste. Just paste it in the middle of the screen, okay? You can also say edit, paste in front, paste in place, and paste in back, okay? So paste in front, and it puts it right back on top of where the other one was. But generally, when you work in Illustrator, it's just Alt drag. Now, you may want to constrain the movement of some object, okay, particularly when you're copying with it. So if I hold down Shift and drag, see it constrains, I'm holding down Shift and the mouse at the same time, and it constrains my movement to horizontal, vertical, or a 45-degree angle, okay? If I let go of the mouse, I'm unconstrained. If I push the mouse down, I'm back to being, sorry. If I hold the keyboard down, I'm constrained. If I let go of the keyboard, I'm back to being unconstrained, okay? So the constraint just matters when you let go of the mouse. That's when it takes place. So you always let go of the mouse, then the keyboard, because the keyboard's constraining the mouse, all right? So, and also here we have sort of a conflict, not really, but it could be a conflict between two uses of the Shift key. We've already seen Shift adds to or subtracts from the selection set, and here we're seeing Shift constrains. So if I push down the Shift first and then go and click on this to move it in a constrained fashion, it's just going to deselect, right? So all you have to remember is the mouse always goes first at the beginning and the end of every action. Okay, so I click down this thing and then Shift to constrain, I move it, and then when I let go, it's also a mouse first. I let go of the mouse, then the keyboard. Okay, so you just have to do it, practice with it to get used to it. But it's very simple once you do. So, so I can make a row of constrained objects, right? And so I'm going to click down this thing, Shift to constrain my movement, Alt to make a copy, Shift to constrain, Alt to copy, drag to the right, let go of the mouse, then the keyboard, okay? So try doing a row of constrained objects. Each one of these things I go through, just pause the video, try it yourself in Illustrator. Hopefully that will be convenient to do that, okay? So there's a row of things, and I don't have to align them or anything, they're already constrained. Let's try making a grid of circles, okay? So first off, let's make, just see if you can, you know, have a little bit of control over what you're doing. So make a circle, right? And not an ellipse, but hold the Shift down and make sure the shift is depressed when you let go of the mouse, okay? And let's make it yellow with a red 10-point stroke, okay? So I bring the stroke to the front, click on the red swatch, and then I go to my stroke palette, and I'm saying 10 points, okay? So it looks like that. All right, so to make an evenly spaced row of objects, all right, first I click down on the thing, shift to constrain my movement, alt to make a copy, drag to the right, let go of the mouse, then the keyboard, okay? Now here's a new thing, Control D, all right? For a long time working with Illustrator, I thought, well, Control D is weird because sometimes it duplicates the object and sometimes it just doesn't work, because I had never bothered to read the manual, but Control D means duplicate your last action. So if I go Control D, I'm just holding down Control and hitting D, D as in duplicate a bunch of times. I get a nice row of circles. All right, now I can do the same thing. I'm going to marquee through them all. We're just practicing manipulating objects in Illustrator and getting comfortable. Okay? So I selected all of them with a regular selection tool. Click and hold down on any one of them. Shift to constrain, alt to copy, drag down, let go of the mouse, then the keyboard and Control D's, and you can make a nice grid of circles. Yeah. All right. So just try that, and yeah, some working with these simple primitive or parametric objects like this. It seems very basic, but we're just kind of learning how to find our way in Illustrator without, so we're not tripping over our feet all the time doing very basic things. Plus, due to the way Illustrator is made with various tools that you can use one shape to cut another or divide another, that you actually use these basic shapes more often than you might think. So, okay, so we made we made a grid of circles, we copied, we constrained. Let's look at aligning objects. So we'll make a collection of objects here. So we have a yellow circle, a red 10-point stroke. Let's draw a wide rectangle like this. Let's make it have no stroke and give it this light aqua blue color. Maybe a large star. And let's make it black. And then we'll copy that. We'll make another circle down here. Actually, not a circle. Let's make a 5-sided object, small one. Right, if I just hit the down arrow, I can make it 5 sides. And we'll leave it yellow with a red 10-point stroke. Okay, so we're going to look at aligning objects. All right. Now, if you have, and again, all the selection will be with the regular selection tool on the top left of the toolbar, not the direct selection tool, right? If I have a bunch of objects selected, you may see up in the top command bar shortcuts to some alignment icons. But let's get the actual alignment palette out, because that's you know, the traditional place to do this kind of stuff. So Window, Align, A-L-I-G-N, Align, there it is. Okay. Now it may, let's see here. It may just show you the top 2 rows. And let's do show options there and align palette menu so we see all 3 rows. Okay. Now, the align palette is very simple. I noticed that when I look at these icons, I can just read them, but maybe it's because I've been doing computer graphics, you know, since the mid-'80s. Well, first of all, we're going to align. So if you look at these 3 rows, only the top row says align objects, okay? The bottom 2 rows are distribute objects and distribute spacing. Distribute means to evenly space. So that's not what we're doing right at the moment, so we're aligning. So just look at those 6 icons, right? The first 3 are to horizontally align something, left, middle, right. The next 3 are to vertically align something, top, vertically, middle, and bottom. Okay, and you know, you can hold your cursor over them. A little tooltip comes up and tells you what it is, but try to get so you can actually just look at that and get what it means, because all computer graphics programs use kind of a similar kind of icons to this. So the first one, horizontal align left, and if you look at it, it's got two little objects that are aligned on the left side, so it kind of makes sense. So I have my object selected, and I'm going to hit that first button, horizontally align left, okay? And you can see that all the objects move to the leftmost side of the leftmost object, which is the big blue box here, okay? If I go horizontally align right, all the other objects move, and the rightmost object doesn't move, which is this big blue thing here. If I do horizontally align center, then they all move to a centermost point, and I can just drag them back into the middle if I want. Okay, vertically, if I align them to the top, they're all going to move up to the top edge of the topmost object. I'm going to undo that because I don't really want to. But so if I want to center everything on top of each other, I just do horizontally align center. There we are, and vertically aligned center, and now everything's on top of each other. I'm just doing Control Z to undo that. So that's aligning objects. It's really straightforward. Nothing much to it. And then distribute objects. Okay. Now distribute. There's a little kind of more buttons than you really need here. Usually, there's 3 vertically distribute. So again, distribute means to evenly space. And 3 horizontal. If I hit one of the horizontal buttons, it's not going to do anything here. If I do horizontally center, see, it didn't do anything because these aren't spread out in a horizontal fashion. But the vertical ones will. So it means the first one is distribute, vertical distribute top, means it's going to evenly space the top edge of every object. The next one is it's going to evenly space based on the middle of every object and based on the bottom of every object. And that's usually, you know, kind of more than you need. Let's just try the first one, vertically distribute top. Gives me that, okay, which doesn't look good. But if you think about it, it actually is correct. The top of this object to this object, right, from here to here, and here to here, and here to here, those are evenly spaced, okay? So probably what I really wanted in this situation was this bottom row distribute spacing, okay? And that puts even space between each object. The first row we looked at there, the distribute objects row, is if you have similarly sized objects, that's probably going to be better. But I'm just showing you distribute for thoroughness. Probably this whole semester you might really never need to use it, but align you use quite often. That's practically every time you use Illustrator, you're aligning things. Changing the overlay of objects. Okay, let's see. So as you draw an object, like if I put this blue box over this, it's on top of it, right? It's not behind it. And the black stars on top of the blue box, right? The overlay, the way that they stack up, is in the order I drew them. Makes sense? But you might have, in an illustration or something you draw in Illustrator, there could be thousands of objects, and obviously you can't draw them in the right order all the time. You need to be able to send things forwards or backwards. Okay, so to do that, here's this black star, right? If I just right-click, arrange, send to back, okay, it goes behind, right? Send to back, send to front. If you right-click, you'll notice arrange. It's arrange. I find arrange to be sort of a weird word choice there, because arrange to me seems like move things around next to each other, not put things, I guess, arrange in the stack. I don't know. But I never use bring forward or send backwards. I always bring to front, send to back. And let me make an example so you can see why. So I'll make a rectangle here, right? And I'm going to make a bunch of copies. And I'm just going to make them different colors. So let's say I want to put this red one, right, in the overlay between the yellow and the gray, okay? So if I go right click and arrange, send backwards, okay, it seems like nothing happened, right? But actually, send backwards means it goes one step down in the overlay, okay? So if you watch, see it went behind the black. If I go arrange, send backwards again, it goes behind the blue. And if I do it one more time, it goes where I wanted it between, I think that's where I said the yellow and the gray, right? So, you know, it's the order, you're not going to remember the order that you make things in an illustration. So it's the send backwards and send forwards is way too tedious. So let me show you how I send something exactly where I want. So I put this back in the front. So what you do is if you want to send something to the middle of the stack, you just select the object and all the things that you want behind it and send them all to the back, right? So like, watch this. I have the red one and I wanted it between the yellow and the gray, right, in the overlay. So I just hold down Shift and select those guys. So I'm going arrange, send to back, and there it is, all in one shot. If let's say I want to move it forward one, I could, in this case, I could go send forward and it would move it up one. But just to demonstrate, I'm going to select the thing I want to move and all the things I want in front of it and arrange, bring to front, and now it's there. Okay, so that's kind of the least clicks involved with sending something forwards and backwards. Now, there's another way to do it, and that is in the layer palette. Okay, should be down in the bottom right of your toolbar. And it might be compressed down the bottom. Just click on the word layers and it'll pop open like mine did. Now, layers in Photoshop, they're like, you know, the control center of Photoshop. You do everything in the layer palette. In Illustrator, you could kind of spend your whole life in Illustrator and not ever use layers, honestly. There's a few important purposes, but it's not like it is in Photoshop. So here, everything is on just one layer because we haven't designated any other layers. But if you click on the little, if you look in the layer palette, there's an icon for what's on that layer. Just left of it is a little right pointing arrow thing. And if you click on that, it opens up and shows you all your layers. It would show you an icon of the artwork, but it just happens that I drew colored rectangles here, and those are, and they look like swatches, but they're really icons of the artwork. So anyway, if I want to put the red between the yellow and the gray, I can just drag it down in the layer palette, and it's that way too. So you can do it like that also, if you prefer. Right click, arrange is bring the front, send the back is how I usually do it. Okay. So let's see. So that's changing the overlay. Let's look at rotating and scaling objects. Okay. We'll draw an ellipse for this. So generally, we use the bounding box to rotate and scale. Okay. If you want to scale the thing, you just get in the corner bounding box handle, right? It scales it. If you want to scale proportionately, you hold Shift down, right? And you let go of the mouse before you let go of the Shift. And particularly if you're scaling type, you don't want to stretch type by accident. That's very shoddy workmanship kind of a thing. Talk about that more when we get to text. But if you want to scale in just one dimension, you get on the little side bounding box handle. If I just want to make it taller or shorter, for example. Okay. Shift to constraint. So we do that with the bounding box. And we also rotate with the bounding box. If you let your cursor, I'm in the regular selection tool, let my cursor hang about 1/4 of an inch or a millimeter or whatever off of one of those bounding box handles, it turns into a little double-ended arrow. Okay, and in that situation, you can rotate. Okay, and if I hold Shift down, it snaps to 90 or 45-degree angles. Okay. Now, one thing I realize now that I forgot to mention, is that you may have smart guides turned on and I don't. So you might be seeing a lot of kind of like numbers and things happening on the screen. And that is, I always turn those off and then I turn them on if I need them. I believe your computers are going to have them turned on by default. So to do that, to turn them off, just go to View, and then you'll see Smart Guides. Okay. And in this particular situation, it didn't make a very big difference in my interface. But if you have a number of objects on the screen, it'll be trying to align things to each other. And it's just more visual feedback than you need. So View, Smart Guides, the shortcut is Control U. So to turn them off is Control U. I would recommend working with Smart Guides turned off. Okay. Okay. So again, it doesn't, in this particular situation, it doesn't show, the difference doesn't show very much, but it just gives you like a little bit less clutter of stuff popping up on the viewport. So rotating and scaling, we did that, right? Now that's using the bounding box. There are two very old school tools in Illustrator. They're a rotate tool and a scale tool that are there from before the bounding box, but they can do certain things that the bounding box manipulator can't do, and so it's worth looking at those. So they are in your toolbar on the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 down on the left and right hand side. It could be that there's other things on top. There's also the reflect tool to flop something, but rotate should be on top. And then there's a scale tool, which is in there with shear and reshape. So let's look at rotate. Let's look at scale first. Okay. So both of these tools work in the same way, which is kind of weird. And probably why they were replaced by the bounding box is you click once to make a pivot point to scale from or rotate around. So you click once to make the pivot point and then you drag. So if I'm going to scale, right, I just got into the scale tool. I click once and now I drag and see it's scaling from this point. Okay. Or I could click in the middle of the object and then scale from there. And honestly, the functionality of it is kind of old school, not in a good way. But what's useful about both of these is if you double click on the icon, it opens up a numeric, a place to put in numbers. So if I want to make this thing exactly 90% of what it was, I can do that. Or if I want to make it twice as tall and half as wide, okay, I can do that. And there's also, preview button there. So if you want to make sure you're doing if something like, say you're doing a commercial job and the customer says, hey, could you make that half the height? You can make sure that you did it exactly half the height. So that's useful. And the same thing with a rotate tool. Let me scale this guy back out again like that. If I click once and then drag, see it kind of like orbits around that spot. And again, the useful thing here is if you double click. So let's say I want to rotate this thing exactly 30 degrees, no problem. Now, this also does one other thing that's really neat. It seems to me like in Illustrator, if all the conventions are consistent, it seems to me like if I hold Alt down while I'm rotating, it should make a copy. Okay, I'm just using the bounding box to rotate, but it doesn't. So that's one place this thing comes in handy because it does. All right, and to get a nice example of this, let's give it a stroke. Okay. Oops. I'll make sure the right thing in the front. All right, so watch this. So I double click on that, and let's say I'm going to rotate it 2 degrees. Right? You can see it's just a little rotate. There's a preview button. But look at this, there's copy right there. So if I hit copy, it makes one that's 2 degrees different. Now, remember just when we made that grid of circles, we did Control D to duplicate our last action. So if I do Control D, I can make this fun thing. Once you get all the way around, don't keep going because it just makes more on top of each other. So that's pretty cool, right? Now, just for fun, watch this. If I take this thing, right, so I zoomed in a little bit, I'm going to make it 1 point. Okay. So if I go edit, copy, so I copy that to the clipboard, and then I'm going to go edit, paste, and back. I'm just goofing around at this point. So I put another one in back. The one that I just pasted, try to not fumble, the one that I just pasted is still selected. So if I make it a different color stroke, let's say black, and I make it a little bit fatter, you can see there's a fatter black line or black ellipses behind the red one. If I go edit, paste, and back again and make it a little bit bigger, change the color again. So you can make a really cool sort of a pattern this way. Anyway, just fooling around. So that is basic manipulations of objects. And things like when the class is live, I'm kind of, as we do these examples, I sort of walk around and make sure everybody's kind of getting it. I can't do that in this situation. But try making those grids of circles or is good exercise. Like you should be able to make a grid of circles in about 10 seconds. So practice it until you can do it that fast.